Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ripple Hangout. And indeed, welcome back to everybody who have been watching our previous episodes, so the one that we broadcasted this afternoon and the one that we broadcasted earlier on Monday. And so let me take this screenshot off. Hi, so my name is Dylan Lowe and I'm the project leader of the Ripple movement. So as per customary ritual, routine, all of that stuff, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what the Ripple movement is all about. And I think I need to go back to me actually. Hi, this is Dylan. That was Jenna. So the Ripple movement is a travel media collaborative where basically a group of us are trying to use travel blogging and travel media and storytelling to raise awareness about social issues. So we're going to have a variety of topics and independent projects that will be happening almost concurrently this summer. We've got topics ranging from sign language to responsible travel, environmental conservation. We've got things like architecture, long weekend culture, so on and so forth. There's going to be one about food anthropology, which is going to be represented by yours truly. But enough of the other projects. They will get their spotlight eventually, or they already have. Today, in this particular session, we are going to be introducing two of our projecteers. So we have Jenna Davis. Say hi.
Hello.
And we also have João Sa.
Hello.
So those guys have two independent projects that are very specifically about community. And I'm going to let them tell you more about what those entail and the specific aspects that they're going to be investigating within the grand spectrum of community and the sense of community itself. So as per also customary that we've actually decided to do as per a couple of days ago, I'm going to kick things off with this one question to both of you actually. So what did you guys have for breakfast this morning? Jenna.
Well, I went down to the bottom of this hotel and had a shopska salad. It's a traditional Macedonian salad, and it's pretty much just like Greek salad, which I'd actually never eat for breakfast before, but first time for everything, and it was awesome. So I had it for lunch and dinner too.
That's fantastic. And what about you, Joel?
Well, I'm in Morocco right now, and these guys have cake for lunch, like actual cake. So I had birthday cake, a bit of jam, and scrambled eggs for breakfast. It's a pretty good combination.
That's fantastic, actually. And I've actually explained this to the other people who've watched the earlier episodes as well. The reason why I ask it is actually, the first reason is because I want to sit here in my London home where I'm actually spending most of my time working on the Ripple movement and feel jealous about all these people out there eating fantastic breakfast whilst I'm just sipping a cappuccino or an espresso of some sort and feeling sorry for myself and not being out there.
We're all checking in New Zealand. It's not just you.
That is actually true, except that I don't have the glamorous background you have over there, Joel. In case everybody's wondering right now, this is actually a terrace that Joel is sitting at the moment in his hostel in Marrakesh at the moment, I believe. Before that, he actually went to a different spot where he actually had a mural painted specifically for this particular hangout, which basically shows a blue sky and clouds, and actually only until about a few seconds ago when we realized it was not actually a mural, it's actually a real thing. The second reason why I decided to ask people about what breakfast they have or have had is because that's a really good way to establish a sense of place about all these projecteers and where they are at the time, because a lot of them are, in fact, out there on the road at this very moment. Even though that we're not kicking off the entire project until July and have that run until November, a lot of these projecteers are probably out there already, either just traveling on a nomadic lifestyle, or they might actually be investigating the topic already, which, to be fair though, it is something that you guys have been doing quite extensively. When I actually encountered you guys in Berlin and spoke to you about the Ripple movement, that is actually when I got to know the pair of you better. And that is when I got to know the awesome work that you've been doing and the documentations and everything. So I'm going to start with you, Jenna, because you have actually just been traveling around Eastern Europe where you've been on a continuous journey, more or less, basically on a train journey around the different countries and regions. And specifically, your project is about the impact of consumerism in tourism. And so you have been basically talking quite a bit about it on social media, on your blog. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing on your blog and everything else, and why would you want to document this particular subject?
Yeah. So, well, I started about 2.5 years ago blogging, and originally I guess it was just more of a method to show my family that I was actually still alive. But moving forward, I finished school in sport management, and I needed to take a minor in something. I had no idea, and I jumped on board for a tourism and environment course in Thailand for 4 months. So I think that really sparked my creativity and my interest for the sustainable and philanthropic side of travel, because we were actually required to not only do environmental travel and sustainable travel, but we were also required as part of our course to do these mass touristic things and compare the two. So it was kind of neat, and I think to be able to investigate now the culture of consuming, it's pretty interesting because, like, I haven't always considered myself a sustainable traveler, but I've actually been in kind of like every side of every angle of travel, so you can really see the way that it impacts different communities. And now that I'm on the road, I'm doing a 2-month trip and all across Eastern Europe. Right now I'm in Macedonia, just came from Albania, and as kind of a little bit of pre-research for myself, I wanted to see what it was like, the consumption of travel and tourists across Eastern Europe. So I've already done a little bit of documentation for myself so that I have some background knowledge on it when we start, and I've definitely already learned a ton, so it's been good.
Fantastic. And actually, what about you, João? So what are you currently doing with your blog itself? I actually I don't have an image. Here we go. We're back. Once again, as I said to Fiona, the other project here the other day, welcome back to the land of the living. Whenever she goes off, and then I just welcome her back with open arms. So with you specifically, João, because once again, you have the experience of being on the road and investigating a particular subject, which is coincidentally what you decided to do as an independent project for the Ripple movement. And yours is specifically about nomadic communities around Europe in this particular project. Now, you did go and spend some time with the nomadic communities in various parts of Europe already, as I understand. First of all, though, before we jump the gun a little bit, who you are and what you do, and how does that relate to the nomadic communities investigation that you will be basically representing?
Okay, so as you know, my name is João already, I told you guys, and I've been on the road for about 14 months right now. And basically, well, I can't really say I've always had this passion, because when I started, I had no idea I was going to be a full-time travel blogger or travel writer, so to speak. And as you said, yeah, I've been connecting with nomadic communities across Europe during my travels for the last year, and only when I started, because in my opinion, you can only know what type of travel you love once you start traveling. You can have a bit of sense and notion what you like, but you can only know what your true passion really is once you're actually on the road. And after being in Hungary, Romania, Serbia, more of the Eastern Europe countries, I started noticing a tendency to speak with people that weren't actually the stellar communities of those countries. So, for example, I noticed a tendency for me to like talking to homeless people or gypsies and people like that, and getting to know their life story, how they ended up there, what happened in their life, so they ended up in that situation. And due to that, this 2015 in January and February, I went to Finland, and my goal was to get to know better the Sami community in Lapland. which is a nomadic community that a couple hundred years ago existed throughout Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Russia, and that was heavily repressed by each country's governments. They tried to repress their culture. They kind of banished their language and costumes. And I wanted to know what they thought of it. How were they holding up? And that's what I did. I had a trip for 7 weeks around Lapland. I got to know amazing people, amazing Sami people from different countries, from Sweden, from Norway, with descendants from Russia. And what I noticed is, even though these people are still kind of repressed nowadays, their happiness and joy is far greater than people on southern Finland. What I noticed is, the more I moved north, the more people wanted to talk to him, the more they wanted to tell their life stories, the more they wanted to share their culture. And when I met you in Berlin, I knew, when you told me what the Ripple movement was about, I knew exactly what I wanted. I
Okay, I think we might just have lost João there. Unfortunately, Morocco.
community.
Oh wait, hang on.
And
He's coming back. Sorry, João. We just missed out a whole chunk of what you were saying just now.
sorry. So where did it stop?
I'm not sure. You were just talking about. Sorry, Jenna. Can you help me out? What was he? Whereabouts did you find him?
I think
being
you were only
drifted
about
off?
5 seconds backwards.
5 seconds backwards. Okay, so I'm going to start from the moment, as I said, when I met you in Berlin,
Yep, that's one.
and about the Ripple movement. I knew exactly what I wanted my project to be. I just didn't have the concrete planned idea, which I gave you some days after. And because after I visited Finland, I knew I wanted to change my niche and my storytelling strategy, which was before off the beaten path mixed with adventure travel. But right now, basically the only thing I want to write about is nomadic communities and indigenous tribes and people that are kind of left away in the world, but that represent a very important part of our world's culture.
Yeah. Yeah, which is actually rather interesting, because those of you who actually tuned into the session earlier today with Marielle and Shivia, where we talked about travel responsibility, the curious thing about that was, so I didn't actually know Shivia, but Marielle has been a really good friend of mine for a very long time, and then she decided that Shivia would be a very good person to bring on board, and then almost coincidentally, because Marielle decided to do something about environmental conservation, she also realized that Shivia might have a lot to say about responsible travel, because she knows that Shivia is very passionate about that particular subject. So that particular pairing itself sort of just fell into place brilliantly. And I'm kind of getting the same vibe with this particular hangout right here with you, João and Jenna, because I spoke to you both in Berlin back in March this year, and coincidentally, both of your projects and both of what you're passionate about has that community implication in it. And it's very much about the interaction with these communities as you go along, isn't it? Because as you were saying just now, João, you talked about how the origins of your awareness about these communities is based on your interaction with people. It's very much based on your spur to go and speak to homeless people, to nomadic people, there's almost that sense of distance from what we consider as, the undesirables of society in a way, except that, they are legitimately communities of their own as well. I mean, how often do you find that? Do they by any chance feel suppressed and feel alienated by what's considered as the normal societies in the world?
I think so. Well, at least when I was in Finland, some of the people that I spoke to, they still felt quite hard what happened to them a couple decades ago, and they don't hate the Finnish, or they don't blame them for it, because it's not really their fault nowadays. But I reckon that what happened kind of helped what's happening nowadays, which is every Sami is fighting for their own culture. They're trying to teach their kids how to speak Sami. They're trying to motivate them to wear the Sami costumes. They even have their own parliament in Finland right now. They have their own laws. They have their own voting table. And I think that happened because of what happened before, because of that repression. And I think that in a couple years, maybe a couple decades, I think at least Sami people in Finland will have a strong presence in the country. They already have a strong presence in Lapland, but what I noticed was before I went to Lapland, I was in southern Finland for about 3 weeks in Helsinki and Turku, and I was really curious because I didn't meet any Sami people there, and I was like, okay, like I know Sami people exist. Why are there no Sami people in the capital? And what I understood was they are there, but they are kind of shadowed behind the rest of Finnish people. So you can't really distinguish them because they look just like normal people nowadays. And by talking to Finnish people from the south, I asked them, so what are Sami people like? So what are their traditions? What do you know about them? And mostly everyone around my age, they didn't know anything about Sami people. They knew they lived in Lapland and they did reindeer herding, but that was about it. They didn't know anything about their history or their culture or their language. They didn't know anything because I guess that's the way they are taught. I don't know how it works nowadays in Finland, but I know that a couple decades ago, the parents kind of repressed Sami knowledge towards their kids, so they wouldn't know a lot about their history. I don't know if it's still what happens nowadays, but the impression I got is that people in southern Finland don't really know a lot about Sami people, and I think that's quite sad in a way, because Sami people come from way more back than Finnish people themselves. And they have a very interesting and rich history. I mean, if you have a nomadic community that spreads throughout Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Russia, I mean, they must have a pretty big and interesting history, right?
Oh yeah, of course. And it's actually, it's funny that you mentioned all that, because it is a really interesting time that we live in at the moment, because this is kind of a time where national homogeny is being obsessed over as much as regional identity as well. I mean, if you look at places like Spain, for instance, where you've got the in Catalonia itself, there's a lot of Catalan regional pride going on at the moment, the preservation of the Catalan language, as well as striving to have independence as well. And then we just had a Scottish referendum as well. So all of that springing up from everywhere. But it's almost as if like nomadic communities are in a very precarious position in this whole paradigm of peoples, of not necessarily suppressed, but minority groups now crying out to have their own independence, because they have the disadvantage of no territorial claim. Because in a lot of the places, in say like in Catalonia, people can certainly say that, okay, we live in Catalonia, this is the part of Spain where there is a Catalan identity. As opposed to with Sami people, for instance, because they are in flux all the time, they don't seem to have a pinned down location where they can claim to be their own, and from there sprout their own culture and say, okay, this is our land, so therefore we speak our language, therefore we practice only our culture. And when I talk about homogeny as well, that's the other really interesting thing, is that homogeny doesn't just come with language and things like that. There's also the problem with consumerism as well, is that there are a lot of capitalistic goods that come with it, and this is definitely where you come in, Jenna, as well, because there are places where sort of more remote places would have not seen technology, for instance. And then when you have the implication of tourism, when you've got these people coming in, visiting the place for the first time, or the locals receiving tourists for the first time and seeing them come equipped with their iPhones and their headphones and all sorts of things, and they're probably just going to look at it and go, well, I really fancy one of those. So in that massive extent, they have exposed themselves to these consumer goods and everything, but they haven't exactly learned the consequences and the intricacies of consumerism itself. I mean, can you actually think of any examples of communities, of pockets of communities that you have encountered on your travels that really exemplify that? And you know, or even just like communities that are very good at educating its people about the good things of consumerism and sort of, taking away all the bad stuff.
Yeah, I definitely have a number of examples. I think the first one that came to mind was probably one of my very first experiences, which was going up north to the Arctic in Canada. So the people who live there are, some of them at least, where I was, which is Iqaluit Nunavut, they're Inuit people. And it's very different here, and I think it's really hard to determine whether it's positive or negative at that point in time, especially for these communities who have never adapted to these new flashy items like iPhones and laptops and everything, and having tourists come in or having see this on TV or anything like that. I think it's a really hard thing to deal with, and that's when the westernized culture kind of comes in and clashes with the original culture that was there. And so right now in the north, I know there's a huge problem because they originally were living off of the land. They were sewing their own sealskin kamiks, which are sealskin boots to live in the north and keep warm. And all of the older generations have all of these skills still, but while more tourism is coming in and while the Western world is being adopted in these communities, I think it's really hard for them to kind of figure out a median in between getting rid of their old culture and adopting the new culture. And I think it definitely clashes, and it's really neat to investigate that, because I've also found out in India too, it's very new for them, because in the past they were used to covering up and not promoting, I guess, sex on ads and everything, and it's new here. And in New Delhi, it's wild to see how big of a clash it actually makes when you're just kind of thrown this new world and this new westernized society with the old norms.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's good to remember sometimes that it isn't something that's happened very recently either. I mean, colonialism has happened. It's been going on for 200-300 years. And you've got, I mean, back to Canada, your homeland, for instance, with the prairies, for instance, the middle part of Canada has a lot of First Nation population still.
Yeah.
And it is something that I've encountered a lot as well, where there are sort of clashes between the white Canadians and the First Nation people as well. So yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of that going on, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, I just want to actually just hear a little bit more about the culture of consuming itself. And I do wonder myself, as well as wanting to ask you on behalf of the people who are watching at the moment, what kinds of documentation will you be doing, and what are you hoping to achieve with it?
I think in terms of this project, to be honest, before the Ripple movement, I was actually on the last broadcast as well, and I noticed that what they wanted to focus on is focusing more on the humanity side and the way people think and the way people feel, and that's actually been most of my focus before, and I realized now that I think investigating the culture of consuming really needs to be stated by kind of like ground facts as well. So I think what I'm going to be doing now is bringing in these facts from what you can learn online and incorporating them with my travels and my experience and learning from the locals. So kind of putting two and two together. And the way I'm going to investigate this is by creating video documentaries. And I have a set of questions already lined up, which I've actually been kind of testing out while I've been in Eastern Europe. And I'll be interviewing not only local community members, but as well as industry professionals and travelers alike. So the way that people travel, some people travel significantly different than other people and complete opposite sides of the spectrum. So already I've I'm shocked at what I've learned, and to be honest, I didn't expect to learn so much already, and I'm really excited to kind of kick it off now because doing these documentaries, I think video documentaries and interviews will really spark some curiosity.
And for shock value, I mean, can you list any examples of anything that you find particularly incredulous? Anything, any particular fact, or even just like somebody else's story that you find particularly unbelievable, but it actually is true?
I think coming into this, I guess I was expecting more of a yes or no answer, as in whether or not the act of consuming as a traveler was good or bad. And I think now I've really realized that it's such a gray area, because going to Eastern Europe, I kind of assumed that they were all going to be very similar, and they're absolutely not. And for example, I went to Bulgaria, and I had already heard that there was a lot of mass tourism going on along the sea, whether you're in Sunny Beach or Neseba or Borges. And going there, it was incredible to learn about everything that's happening. And some of the locals are actually leaving because there's so much tourism coming in the summer. And with the locals leaving, they don't have enough staff to be, or workers to be building these resorts and hotels, which is resulting in poor infrastructure. And I learned while I was there that the piping and the sewage isn't up to par to be able to hold this many travelers for 2 months of the year. And I went there last month, which it was beautiful. I swam in the ocean. It was warm and wonderful. I was one of about 10 people in this hotel that could probably house well over 1,000 people. And so it just wasn't realistic. And even the local people there admit that it's 2 months of tourism and it's not going in the right direction. Whereas places like Sibiu, which I already wrote an article on the Ripple movement, it's very neat because it's a relatively new place that's introducing tourism for the first time, and it's exciting to be able to be there and see what can happen with tourism. So they've got like this fresh start, this fresh slate of how they can go ahead and promote tourism. And I was talking to a bunch of different authorities of the cultural ministry and the tourism board, and all of them are really excited about using their history and their culture and preserving all of the older architecture. And there's a museum there, which is an open air museum for tons of different old historical buildings and artifacts that you can see outdoors. So they're kind of promoting this as a cultural destination and really avoiding that mass tourism, like beer drinking, the typical. But it was complete two sides of the spectrum, and those probably are the biggest shockers that I had so far, but I've learned so much.
And that's actually the most interesting that I'm finding, and the most excited I am about Jenna's project is that, just from the two examples you listed here, you can kind of see the spectrum being constructed right now, where you've got the two extremes on both sides. You basically have a place like Sibiu, which, by the way, I do urge you guys to go check out the website and check out the article itself. It's a great bunch of recommendations by Jenna, where a settlement that has not really seen that much tourism, and all of a sudden receiving the media spotlight, and then people are coming in to see it for what it is, and still manage to sustain itself and utilize the new flux of basically investment money and tourism money to constantly renovate itself. And then you've got the other side of the spectrum, where you've got the complete breakdown of a community as a result of a direct result even of tourism. And then you've got sort of the grey area in between. So yeah, I mean, in that sense, there would be a lot more case studies of basically settlements and places that are impacted by tourism that sit in between as well. And I really, really do look forward to seeing more of that. And speaking of grey area, João, grey area is probably one thing that definitely exists in nomadic communities around Europe, because you've got the people like Sami people who are generally perceived as relatively harmless and everything, and then you've got the Roma people, for instance, and they're kind of almost like the epitomes of problems in a lot of places, especially when it comes down to crime, especially when it comes down to well, basically properties and places like that being occupied for no reason, what we call squatting over in the UK as well, which is where basically gypsies come in to an empty flat that actually is owned by somebody, or somebody probably been away on holiday or something like that, and they decided to just move in and refuse to leave. And there's no way of dealing with that until basically the authorities sweep in and take them out. So in that sense, I want to talk more about what you would like to specifically document with your project. And have you thought about the intricacies and the complexity of the issue that is the nomadic communities around Europe?
Well, first of all, I knew from the start when I proposed to you my independent project, I knew that would be hard to do what I have planned. I know it's not a simple task. It's not just photographing and writing about it. It's something very, how can I say, very deep, very emotional, very historic, and I think that that's the reason why I like it. That's the reason why I chose this project. Why this project actually touches my soul. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I'm gonna give you the example. For example, I'm right here in Morocco right now, and it's not Europe, obviously, but you also have nomadic communities here. For example, the Berber people, which everybody knows about. But what most people don't understand is, but that for me is a very curious thing, because many people come here and they're always asking, why do all Moroccan people speak French? Like they think that they learn French in school or something. But the truth is, after the invasion of North Africa by France, this was a couple hundred years ago. They repressed the Berber community. They forbid them to speak whether Arabic or their own regional dialects. They forbid them to speak that, and they made them only speak French. So in schools, the only language they would learn would be French. In home, the only language they could speak was French. So for a quite big amount of time, Berber people cannot speak other language apart from French. And well, obviously French was passed down for generations, and even though Arabic and Berber language didn't disappear and it's still spoken here, French always stuck. But it's not because they want to learn French. It was inserted in their own culture by a revolution, by an invasion, basically. That was only a mere example, that it doesn't have anything to do with Europe, but that kind of represents how hard it is to document what I want. Because if you ask Moroccan people about the North African invasion or about Western Sahara, which is still a big problem here, since part of it's controlled by Spain, they don't want to talk about it. And I'm afraid, but I'm quite skeptical that's what's going to happen in some parts in Europe as well. As you talked about the gypsies, which are basically Roma and Sinti communities, most people think they're dangerous because that's the preconception we have in most Western Europe countries. In Portugal as well, most of my friends, even me included, when I was younger, we were scared of gypsies, and we thought they would rob us or stab us or do something bad to us. But the truth of the matter is, most of them, they haven't moved away from their country because they wanted to. They were forced to do it, and most of them are harmless. Well, obviously there's always bad apples in the trees, but when most people think that gypsies are a bad part of a community, most of them are actually working in improving the community. That's one thing I want to do. I want to raise awareness towards how beneficial the nomadic communities can be if we help them keep their own cultural trace, because what most countries, what most settled communities are trying to do is move the nomadic communities from where they're based right now and settle them in the same place where they live. Because if you think clearly about it, most nomadic communities live in very hard to reach zones. For example, Lapland, a lot of Sami people live in the middle of nowhere basically, so it's very hard to build schools and hospitals and provide them with what modern world has to give them. And even though most of the times they might not do it on purpose, by moving them away from the natural environment, from the place where their culture and history comes from, they're kind of annihilating a big part of their culture. Because, in my opinion, what really makes you get to know a country, a region, a city, is connecting with people. And if you go somewhere, the people are not there. I mean, you can go to museums, you can take photos, you can see buildings, you can read books, but if you don't talk to the people, you will never get the same sense of place, the same sense of cultural connection as you would if you talk to them. So that's what I want to investigate. I want to know how we as a global community can help these nomadic communities keep their cultural trace, and how we can help them preserve their cultural identity while providing them with better life conditions. So basically, what I want to do is interview nomadic communities and settled communities from the same country and try to brainstorm with them what they think would be better for both of them. So for example, I want to know what people in Helsinki would be able to do to help Sami people. What would Sami people be able? What would they be able to do to get more connected to the people that are not Sami, to the Finnish people? Or for example, even in Portugal, what can Portuguese people do to help? I don't like these Roman Sinti communities integrate in the Portuguese community, and what can they do also to make them seem less threatening than what they are right now? I want to document this, and I want to show people. I want to open people's minds, because most people don't even think about this when they travel. They go. I'm always using Finland Lapland because Finland example, because Finland's really stuck in my head, and it's by far the favorite country I've ever visited. And most people, they go to Lapland, they go either to ski or to, I don't know, to do reindeer hunting, which is also a cultural activity, but it's still not connecting with people, if you know what I mean. And I want to let them know there are other ways of traveling, there are other ways of getting more cultural enriched. There are other ways of actually helping the people that live in those places when you travel. And even though I'm only documenting Europe, I want my project to serve as an example for the whole world. And yeah, that's basically my plans.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, João. And somewhere along the lines of what you said when you were talking more in depth about your project and about the nomadic communities around the world as well, one very interesting point that you mentioned is the hardship of these nomadic communities. And it's not just necessarily the suppression, but from what I understand, even the whole nomadic culture, the nomadic communities are born out of necessity, born out of the harshness of the environment they live in. Because that's how nomadicism works. You end up going to a place, you deplete its very scarce resources, and then you move on to the next place. So it seems like even nomadicism is actually itself a concept built on being able to deal with hardship. And that's the thing about hardship as well, is that on a very personal level, you can kind of see how it makes people more closed off. You can see how people seem to be a bit more frigid, impenetrable on the outside. And looking at the trailer video that we have produced here at the Ripple Movement, and João, you're one of the people who really kindly submitted a whole load of footages that we were able to use for that, and a lot of those actually included your own visit to Lapland and your interaction with the Sami people as well. So I'm just out of curiosity, from sort of the storytelling perspective, was there a particular encounter that you can tell us about that you could, it was particularly heartfelt to you, that it was particularly something, that a story that you can empathize with?
I can give you two examples, two very, very strong examples of what you're asking me. So the first one was what happened during my second, let's say, checkpoint in Lapland. And I was staying at this very, very small village with around 30 people, and I was staying at this kind of shared. I was staying at this kind of shared community place, where a lady, well, the lady that owns the houses now, her parents were Sami, her grandparents were Sami, and they settled there. They had the community there. It's right by a lake, so they could fish there during the summer. During the winter, they would do reindeer herding, and they basically settled there. And now she kind of built a number of guest houses there where people can stay and kind of feel connected to the culture of the place. And one of the activities I did with this lady was to build this Sami drum, or a Lapis drum, if you want to call it, which basically consists of reindeer skin wrapped around a wood structure that you need to build yourself with wood that you pick up from the forests of Lapland, to actually have a strong meaning. And while I was talking to her, I asked her a number of questions. So, well, how did you end up here? What do you think of the Sami community nowadays? And, well, she kind of told me her childhood, which still occurred during the time where Sami people were being a bit repressed. And she told me that in school they couldn't speak Sami, they couldn't wear Sami clothing. Even at home, they would feel scared of doing it because they thought other people could hear them. And it was a very heart-touching story, because I could see in her eyes that she still felt the sadness and fear of 50 years ago. And it kind of took me back to, it was kind of like she teletransported me there. It was like I was next to her in that moment in the 1940s, 1950s. And that was the moment that most touched me in terms emotionally during my trip in Lapland. Because apart from that, on the end of our conversation, she changed from being in a melancholic state to a very happy state, where she was saying, nowadays, my kids speak Sami, I can wear Sami clothing, and this is changing completely dramatically. And I can see in her eyes the hope growing, the joyness of being able to live by your own terms, by your own culture, by nothing forbidden, speak the way you want, dressing the way you want, by worshipping the way you want. Because Sami people have a totally different kind of religion. Their religion is based upon nature and what nature offers you, and obviously most people didn't agree with that in 50 or 60 years ago, and that's kind of, I kind of felt that as well while I was doing the Lapis drum, because you need to be clear-minded when you do it for it to actually show you. So basically, after you have the skin, you dip it in a black oil, which I don't remember what it's based off. You let it on 30 minutes, and when you take it off, it totally shows your state of mind or things that are going to happen in your future. And a friend of mine, Emil, she's also a travel blogger, and when
Okay, I think we might have lost João there for a second. Well,
I was
in case you
black
saw...
around,
Sorry, we just lost you, João.
okay, sorry. Are you listening to me?
Yes, I am now. We just lost your audio a couple of seconds ago.
Okay. So I was talking about Camille's drum, which it was incredible. It was all black, very dark gray, and then it literally had an angel in the middle, and no one painted that. The reindeer skin was all dipped in the same ink, and it was amazing. And my drum, when I took it off, I couldn't see anything. I was like, okay, so I guess I was not really in the correct state of mind to it. But in the next day in the morning, I went to it and I saw kind of a bird, and I asked this sunlight, well, what does this mean? And she was like, this is a vieco, which she couldn't really translate to me in English, which is a kind of bird they have in Finland that represents happiness. And she told me, you either have been very happy in Finland in a past life, or in the future you're going to be very happy here. And that kind of made me think, because during my time in Lapland, I kind of felt like I was home. Even though I'm from Portugal and the temperature there varies between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, when I was in Lapland it was minus 30. I felt comfortable, I felt happy, I felt refreshed, like I hadn't felt in a long time while traveling. Because when you travel, you're always moving and you're always in a constant mind change process. No, I didn't feel that. I felt connected to the world, basically connected to nature. And yeah, that's one episode that I won't forget.
Yeah,
and the other episode, very briefly, happened by the end of my trip up in Luogan, which is the northernmost point in Finland. And basically, I went to do reindeer herding with Sami reindeer herder, and we were in the middle of nowhere. It was like we had trees all around us. We were like in an empty field, and he screamed something in sign language, which I could not understand, but it was very loud. And out of nothing, hundreds of reindeers come from behind trees running, and they start running in a circle around us. And I was scared because I've never seen that. And it lasted for a couple minutes until we had hundreds of reindeers running us. And I looked at him and I asked him, how did you do that? And very innocently he looks at me and he says, I don't know, my father taught me. So for them, it's a very common thing to happen. Well, for me, it was one of the most magical and eerie moments I've ever experienced. And those are the two episodes that I strongly remember from my time in Finland.
It's really magical, isn't it? I mean, that's the kind of thing that people want to have when they go and visit a different place, when they travel, if this is the mindset they want to be in. And sometimes it can be a completely out-of-the-world magical experience, but sometimes it could be dubbed as folklore. The same way that, you know, you talked about a lot of different activities you did, like reindeer, sledge riding, and all that stuff. I'm just thinking from this particular perspective, if, you know, people like you who are telling the stories, who've actually encouraged more people to go and visit the Sami people, and that itself has become a tourist attraction. And this is actually specifically where I want you to jump in, Jenna, because this is entirely your field. Say, hypothetically, that we're still talking about the Sami people here, and because of the awareness that's being raised about the Sami people has actually generated, hypothetically, an influx of tourism into this community. And, you know, in this sense, we are considering the whole spectrum. We're considering people who are there genuinely wanting to have interactions with these Sami people. But almost as likely we are going to get people who just want to have the activities, just want to look cool in their profile pictures, and not consider interacting with people and getting to know people's lives. I mean, how would you imagine that unfold? I mean, how would you think that would the repercussions of that? How would you envision it?
Unfortunately, I think from a tourist perspective, as we're going in, and it's great to be able to promote these nomadic families and cultures and places to come and visit, and it's wonderful. But at the same time, I think it has a lot to do with the local culture there and how they bring in this tourism. So, for example, I was in Thailand at one point, and they have these tribes in northern Thailand, and we went and visited a tribe, and they did all of their traditional dancing and showed us their clothes, and they said, yes, we wear this every day, this is our life. And this was one of the projects that I did while I was in Thailand, and it turned out that they don't wear these clothes. The dances weren't even that part of their culture. They were just doing it for the tourism. So it was bringing them in more money, and this was the way that they gained their income. So I think it's really about how we consume the culture as tourists, because you can go there with a state of mind saying, I just want to do this as an activity for my Facebook profile, and unfortunately that's a lot of the reason why these cultures and community members choose to create these almost fake versions of their culture, because that's where they're getting the most success. And I mean, you can't blame them for doing that. If that's what the tourists are asking for, that's what they're going to provide you. So I think it really depends on how we come in, and how it's very hard to say how we ask for tourism, because you can't just ask for it to be that way. And I guess that's the whole reason why I'm doing this investigation on how we as travelers can kind of sway our consumption of travel to a more positive light, and really embracing these local cultures, because as João said, they're wonderful, magical communities, and you want to be able to embrace them as much as possible. And as long as they're sticking to their roots and they're really embracing what they have and what they've learned from the past, I think it's harmless. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for the tourism to grow there, and for a lot of the time it's actually helping preserve the culture. It's just how the community members want to kind of accept that tourism.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you said that about the culture, actually, because quite often sometimes it isn't the culture that people go and see, but the exoticness, the differences of your own culture compared to all these people who would be dancing naked, except with a grass dress, on a beach. And you don't necessarily want to see it because it's something that you have a particular curiosity about, but it's different. It's different to what you're familiar with. And it seems like a lot of, what I've personally encountered as well in a lot of the South Pacific islands I've traveled in, where there's an increase of cruise tourists. A lot of people from the cruises who would be dumped onto a beach, and basically they just spend a half-day excursion there, wandering around the market, watching all these dancers who actually were just there for the half day when the cruises are there. And so there is that sense, but there's also the other sense where there are locations, there are destinations that are actually staying true to their original culture, to the original heritage. The same way that with Jenna, with Sibiu as well, because it is named a European capital of culture. Yeah. And very much a lot of what it is defined as its culture comes with its medieval links, with the two parts of the world, as well as the architecture, which is quite often what's the thing that survives, that also is celebrated in a destination. The same way that, going back to you, João, which I think is somewhere.
Sorry, my charger dropped out.
No worries. The same way that I think that with the Sami people, for instance, is that they have that authenticity about them, because they are genuinely celebrating a culture that they have existing, and they live and breathe it, and they haven't actually just done that, but they've actually actively campaigned to have that preserved. So I think I'm just going to draw a conclusion with this entire session with a little collaboration practice, actually, because I'm very curious about the overlaps between you, João, and Jenna, with your different aspects of community and preservation and, you know, the tourism implications and consumerism. I just want to propose, hypothetically, that you two collaborate on a little project right now, as a bit of discussion, about bringing up the awareness of the Sami people. And specifically in the sense, I'm not just talking about travel media, but I'm talking about how tourism itself can help with the Sami people. What are your output with that? What can you immediately think of?
I think.
Oh,
you can go
sorry.
first.
Go for it.
Okay. I think, like, coming from a travel blogging perspective, and I'm always online on social media, I think João had mentioned before that having some of the people in the cities, it would be really cool to have them work with the local communities and build something together. And I think that's the most important thing here, is that if they can work together to build that. Typically, the smaller communities and the nomadic communities, of course, that many of them don't have access to internet and promotion and marketing and media. And I mean, this is the new world, and this is how travelers get the information on where to go and what to do. And so I think that having everybody work together is kind of the best option for this. And it's, I mean, the Ripple movement as well. It's having all of these travel bloggers come together and in a collaborative effort to help raise awareness about social issues and social topics. So I think the marketing of it would be huge, because that is, I mean, everybody immediately goes to TripAdvisor or something to do something. So to be able to promote a community like that, I think that would be definitely the first step.
Yeah. João?
Well, first of all, I think the Finnish Tourism Board is doing an amazing job regarding raising awareness towards cultural tourism. Because even though it was kind of hard for me to find some activities that I wanted to do, they have a very strong cultural presence in their social media, especially in YouTube. They have incredible videos showcasing Sami people, and I think it's called the Summer. I don't know the name in English, but they have a cultural festival in summer as well that they're heavily promoting on YouTube. And regarding that, I think the Finnish Tourism Board is doing an amazing job. Now, regarding what could be improved, I think that it's up to the people, to the Sami people, to also invest in that, because as Jenna said, it's in a lot of places it was very hard for me to connect to the Wi-Fi. Even if I could, it would be painfully slow. So what I think can be done would be not TripAdvisor, but create well, I think it would be very beneficial, not only for Sami people in this case, but for the whole cultural and nomadic society, to create a kind of platform where like-minded travelers who like to connect with local people and get to know the local culture and get immersed in diverse cultural activities. I think it would be very beneficial to create a kind of network like this. Because I know a lot of people who are looking for that, but many times it's very hard for them to find them. So, I mean, as travelers, we're looking for the best and most efficient way to find activities. So, even if we're very interested in the subject, and if you don't find them in a couple of days, we just say, okay, never mind, I'm just going to do something else. It's also fun. Well, I'm not like that, obviously, but this is my passion. It's a kind of different feeling from what a regular traveler would have towards this matter. So I think it would be very beneficial to create either a kind of forum or a community like TripAdvisor, for example, but specifically for cultural activities and everything related to nomadic communities, and how in each country and each city you can best connect to local people. What I think one very specific method that I think would be very beneficial regarding some people would be doing homestaying during your trip. I tried that. I tried to find it in a lot of places, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I think it would be very, very interesting to spend, I don't know, for example, 5 days with a Sami reindeer herder, live exactly like they live their whole days, 24/7. So go to sleep when they go, wake up at 4 in the morning as they do, riding the snowmobile, see how the reindeers are doing, go from place to place to feed them, and then maybe do some ice fishing in the afternoon. And I think that would be that would be what I would like to do, and if I return to Finland in terms of cultural travel, that would be what I would like to do. Have different options, like maybe a 3-day program, a 5-day program, a 2-week program for people who want to have a more intense experience. I think that would be very, very interesting.
That's all fantastic, actually. That's another reason why we're very much looking forward to what you guys have got to say in terms of not the respective subjects you have about nomadic cultures or the impact of consumerism, but we also want to hear from you guys what are the great things to do when it comes down to checking out these communities and checking out, the different nomadic tribes and people like that. And in essence, you guys are spreading the news. You guys are really spreading the news about basically these pockets of communities and nomadic tribes and all that. But then considering, and this is going back to the tourism side, talking about the community, the impact of tourism, the impact of consumerism on communities. Now, I'm just thinking that because we earlier talked about how it could actually, the pendulum can swing both ways. It can really royally mess up a place and completely disintegrate a community, or it can do it. It can reap fantastic benefits for it. Now, I kind of just want to wrap up this entire thing because we're now 8:03 and we're kind of slightly over time at the moment. I kind of just want to get a one-sentence answer from both of you out of curiosity. And the question is, because it can go both ways, it can either go really right or really wrong, not just about establishing a tourism infrastructure in these communities, but even just to promote them, even just to document them. Do you think it's worth the risk? Jenna?
Jenna, go first. You're the lady.
Okay. I definitely think it's worth the risk. I think at the end of the day, you don't know until you try, and tourism is such a large industry in the world across every country. I think it would absolutely be worth the risk.
Fantastic. João?
I think, in my most honest opinion, I think that even if there's any harm that can be done, I think the benefits of creating such thing would be far greater than any harms. Because if you create a travel industry surrounding cultural travel, there's always going to be a mix of cultural and responsible tourism, because people who usually are interested in this kind of travel are not those kind of people who are looking for parties or messing things up, so to say. So I think that these people would have the right mindset to improve the tourism industry in this way, because not only are you promoting a very important piece of culture, you're also helping these communities survive by helping them in terms of monetary growth. But you're also helping the country, because if you help these communities, you're helping the tourism side of it. So I think there shouldn't be any kind of fear regarding taking steps towards these fantastic solutions.
And you're entirely right about the right mindset as well. It's something that we did talk about earlier on in the other session, about how it's not just a part of the consumers or the industry isolated, but actually both sides share the responsibility. And because sometimes it does take the right sets of minds of basically contribute to this effort, this global effort of being more responsible and basically be more empathetic and help each other out. And this is where I'm going to say that I'm very much looking forward to both of you, Jenna and João, for embodying that spirit in your independent project coming up in this summer and autumn. And it is now rapidly approaching 8:06, and we definitely very over time. So I just want to quickly wrap this up with another piece of news about tomorrow's the Ripple Hangout. So the broadcast tomorrow is going to be happening at 2 p.m. UK time. All the details are on the Ripple Movement website itself. It's going to be about space and time. So we're going to have two projecteers coming in to talk about architecture and this concept that is this bizarre little concept called long weekend culture. So as you can see, it's kind of looking at the both sides of basically being able to. It's kind of what humanity is built upon, space and time. And that's exactly what we're going to be investigating tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. And if you're rewatching this, thank you too for taking the effort to come and watch through the entire thing, actually. It's been a very fantastic debate. I've had a great time. And I'm pretty sure that Jenna and João had some very interesting things to say on the Ripple Movement website and on their blogs as well, so please do check them out as well. And thank you so much, you guys, for taking your time to come and talk to us. Really appreciate all your knowledge and your know-hows and experience and everything. So, in the meantime, it's goodbye from Jenna.
Ciao.
It's goodbye from João.
Bye, guys. See you soon.
And in the true spirits of Jeremy Paxman on University Challenge, it is goodbye from me. So I will speak to you guys again tomorrow. Hopefully you'll tune in then. So see you guys.